So today, in this world today, we have two popular pastimes that everybody's aware of. We have a whole bunch of them, but these two that kind of go along with what we're teaching on today, these two popular pastimes are enjoyed in our country, and the two have to do with games, video games, and sports. Sports has been popular in our country for centuries, it seems like, at least decades, and now video games. And with this, video games have provided lifelike war experiences from what I can see, and challenges to the participants who must be able to understand the rules of the video game and the rules of engagement. They must be able to discern the circumstances that they're getting into and then react with perfect timing and perfect accuracy. And that's what I've been educated by my grandson in these things, and I've seen that this is something that even the younger ones recognize as something that's required for these scenarios here. And then sports for years have provided similar action in that many would consider warfare. In other words, sports figures are often even looked at as warriors and even celebrated. And the players are viewed as these warriors on the field because they're in grueling competition. They get hurt. They get hurt to the point of sometimes even leading to death, but most of the time hurt where they're permanently maybe hurt by these things where they can't even move on, broken from these things. But in both of these scenarios, rules and consequences for breaking the rules are applied to both sides. Even though a football player might get brutally injured, he's still in a scenario where there's rules and both sides must follow the rules. And so they're somewhat controlled environments, somewhat. Now a football player would say, well, you might say a controlled environment, you might say rules, but it hurts really bad. And we can understand that. But the bottom line is, overall, there's rules on both sides that are normally enforced. On the other hand, we see then that police officers and those in the military are engaged in warfare where they are held accountable to the rules of engagement, but that the enemy is not held accountable to the rules of engagement. And with this, the warfare is a deadly game with deadly weapons. The enemy has no rules as far as they're concerned, and yet God has ordained the institutions of both the military and the police, and God has ordained that the military and the police are to follow the rules. A tough situation when the enemy doesn't have to, but we do. These warriors are highly trained with weapons for this warfare, and only certain people will sign up for this as a career. But you got to get this part. You got to get this part. Every single Christian has been marked out as a warrior for spiritual warfare. So even if it wasn't something you thought you would sign up for on this level, or this level, you have been signed up to be involved in spiritual warfare. And in the same way as other warriors, Christians must follow the rules while the enemy doesn't follow the rules. And to make matters worse, these enemies are not flesh and blood, so you can't even shoot back. And so with this, guns, marksmanship, coordination, agility, physical fitness means nothing in this war. And really, even the threat of death means nothing in this war, because the war is about heaven and hell. The stakes are higher in this war than any of these other wars. Video games, football games, police work, military, spiritual warfare is the most brutal warfare with the highest stakes, and everybody that's a Christian is signed up for this. So just think about that for a minute. Well, I didn't really sign up for that. Well, you signed up for this. This is the situation. Paul told Timothy in 1 Timothy 1:18, fight the good fight. You notice we're reading constantly through Scripture in the Psalms. We're talking about battles. We're talking about warfare. So Paul is telling Timothy, fight the good fight. And even at the end of the letter was Paul's own life, the end of his life. And he said this, I have fought the good fight. I have finished the course. I have kept the faith. And this is 2 Timothy 4:7. Man is unable to fight against spiritual entities, but God is able. Ephesians 3:20 and Jude 1:24. Therefore, and you know this already, the false armor of man-made systems doesn't work. The false armor that you may have tried to put on in spiritual warfare doesn't work. Psychology and false religion cannot protect you from Satan's attacks. False armor, get this, false armor failed Peter. Peter had false armor on, but it failed. Peter thought that he could be a rescuer, a hero to save Christ from the cross. So he popped off saying, oh, we're going to make sure this doesn't happen. We'll protect you. And what did Jesus say to him? Get behind me, Satan, because Peter was being used as a mouthpiece. His armor did absolutely nothing. Satan just completely used him and took advantage of him, chewed him up and spit him out right in front of everybody. This is in Matthew 8:33, Mark 8:33. He then failed again, and as he was sifted by Satan, denying Christ 3 times. His whole system of thinking that he could challenge Satan or do any of these things on his own really bit him. They really messed him up. Yet Jesus did say in Luke 22:31-33 that at some point Peter would bear the armor of God that he needed to then lead others. And we saw that this happened. Christians need the full armor of God to fight off the attacks of Satan. The full armor of God. Because his attacks come in the forms of lies. And we see that Satan's Antichrist will take over the world by using lies. He will take over the world by lies. It starts out in Revelation 6:1, and it talks about it then throughout Revelation, but then in 18:23, it also talks about that the Antichrist will be able to take over the world through the deceit of even using pharmaceuticals to deceive. The world then, as you know it, as you know is going on, is right now even being duped. The world is being duped by Satan. And as Christians, we cannot allow ourselves to be duped by the lies of Satan. We cannot be intimidated, and we need protection. We need protection. Satan's attacks come in these different forms. They come in this situation. He brings about doubt for Christians, making them feel disconnected from the power of God. And this is seen in a believer feeling anxious, hopeless, desperate, despondent, depressed, and even suicidal. Satan brings about those feelings. Even suicidal. Satan is the liar and the murderer from the beginning. He also brings about, his attacks come in difficulty of persecution and hard times, like, I just can't go on, this is too hard, I'm getting too beat up, everybody hates me, it's hard. He can also then attack Christians through doctrinal confusion. He can mess people up. He can mess you up about your salvation, about your sanctification. He can send mixed messages about morality, even heaven and hell, and end times even. And he wants to make the Bible seem gray. Like, well, you just can't understand it. There's just too much. I mean, just go do the right thing. He tries to make it seem confusing, and yet we see every Sunday that we can dig in and see what it has to say. He throws distractions with obstacles and stumbling blocks. He causes division in the church. He causes deceitful living. In other words, he causes Christians to be hypocrites. He not just, I don't mean causes it where we can blame him, but he influences. We can't blame him. We're held accountable for ourselves, but he influences this for Christians to be hypocrites. He messes with Christians, causing them to be dependent on themselves. You got this. You got this. In other words, in the form of pride. He also wants to, at any time he can, make you disobedient to the Word of God. So these are ways that he attacks. His attacks are many, and they come from every side, and they're usually with deceit. Even if it seems almost true, but it's that much off, well, he's pretty close. That pretty close, supposedly, will send you to hell if you're not saved yet. If you don't get this right, and that's what he wants to do, is he just wants to twist it just a little bit. So we're going to see here in Ephesians 6, once again, as we are in our spiritual warfare series, Ephesians 6, verses 13 to 17 describes 2 types of armor of God so that you may be equipped to stand firm in the midst of spiritual warfare. So I'm going to go ahead and read Ephesians 6, verse 13, starting. Therefore, take up the armor of God, the full armor of God, so that you will be able to resist in the evil day, having done everything to stand firm. Stand firm, therefore, having girded your loins with the truth, and having put on the breastplate of righteousness, and having shod your feet with the preparation of the gospel of peace. In addition to all, taking up the shield of faith, which will be able to extinguish all the flaming arrows of the evil one. And take up the helmet of salvation and the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God. So we're in our second lesson of spiritual warfare in our series. And last week we looked at verses 10 through 12, where we learned that Paul was warning the believers, which I again am warning you, that we are in fact in a battle, and that we need to recognize these things. And in these passages 10 through 12, we recognize that the warrior needs to be prepared by being strong in the Lord, and the warrior needs to use the provision of the Lord, which we know is the armor of God, so that he may stand firm and resist the attacks of the enemy. Then we learned from those passages in verse 12, we learned then what the enemy looks like. Who's the warrior's enemy? We learned that last week. We learned that it's not flesh and blood, but it's Satan and his demons, is what we learned. You got to know who your enemy is, and we learned that last week. His plan, the enemy's plan, is to destroy God's kingdom and build his own kingdom. His main target is Christians, and his strategy is to get you, as a Christian, to sin, therefore ruining your testimony to the watching world. He wants to separate you from God and from other Christians. And his lies are his primary tool. And so today, once again, we're going to see the two types of armor that we have in more detail, that you may be equipped then to stand firm in the midst of spiritual warfare, which you can't get out of. And remember, it's worse than what any Vietnam veteran's been through. And I know that might be offensive to people, but the bottom line as a Christian, spiritual warfare, everything is at stake. And you got to get this right. So first we're going to see these two types of the armor of God. This week we're going to look at the warrior's wear. And next week we're going to look at the warrior's weapon. They're all considered under the armor of God. The first one this week then is the warrior's wear, verse 13 through 17a. Therefore, take up the full armor of God so that you will be able to resist in the evil day, having done everything to stand firm. Stand firm, therefore. We're going to see what this looks like. This section then follows Paul's command earlier to be strong, and it means being strong in the strength of God, of what he has already given you. I need extra strength. I need more strength. And over we read that he's provided us already these things. And we just need to understand what they are and recognize, wow, I didn't know this was in my pocket. Where did this come from? I'm armed. I'm able. And he's given us these things. So now he described how to be strong, which was putting on the armor of God generally, and now specifically we're going to look at it. As he approaches describing the armor of God, he uses the term or the phrase stand firm 2 more times. Stand firm is 3 times in this whole section, but here we have it 2 times. The first time here we see is at the end of verse 13, and he's using the verb tense that describes the ability to stand firm. You have the ability to stand firm. And then the second one is therefore to you have the ability to stand firm when you put on the armor of God. And therefore, at the beginning of verse 14, he says, now, he's commanding, now, stand firm. In other words, when you have put on the armor of God, you have the ability to stand firm. Therefore, stand firm. That's what it means, is that you, as a Christian, have the ability. You just need to recognize it. You have the ability to stand firm. Now do it, is what he's saying here. And this is to occur when? For the evil day. Well, when's the evil day? Well, it's every day. Oh, for that day. Yeah, for that day. So we're to resist and stand firm, And to resist and to stand firm are to be done once and for all, never letting up. We saw this in Ephesians 4:27, not giving Satan any ground any day, ever. That's what standing firm means. And so overall, we'll see that the armor of God really represents the fact that the war has already been won by God. So overall, the full armor of God means I'll be okay. I don't know the details, which we'll look at the details, but the bottom line is the full armor of God means I understand the war has already been won, and I know I'll come out on top. I'm okay. That's what the full armor, but then he divides it up for us so we really get the gist of it all. We see then that this battle's already been won by God. Jesus told the church in Philadelphia in the book of Revelations, Revelation 3:8, he told the church in Philadelphia that even though they had little power in themselves, they could do much through the strength of the Word of God. Paul says this about the ministry that he's involved in, all the warfare that he's been involved in. He says this for Philippians 4:13, I can do all things through him who strengthens me. And of course, Paul's not talking about making touchdowns or winning in a video game. He is actually, all things means all things that are important spiritually, all the struggles that I'm in, I have the strength of God to do all these things. And it doesn't mean that I'm just going to go out there and claim Philippians 4:13 and try to make a touchdown or try to get a promotion or because I have this. It's for these specific things that have to do with where you really need the strength of God is to fight the battle. And so what we're going to see here is that the individual pieces of armor represent Christian virtues within Christian experiences. So you're going to see that each one of these pieces of the armor of God represent things that you're going to go through and the ways that you should respond to them. Christian virtues mean the way that you should come out on top by recognizing each of these things to the fullest. You will then be able to handle every one of these types of experiences that come your way. And that's what the full armor of God gives us. So the first things that we'll see, though, is that the first pieces of armor are to be worn continuously, 24/7. This is the term we use in police work, called being proactive. It means being prepared to look ahead to see what you're going to need. Well, putting on the first three pieces of armor, as we will see, is something that you need to wear in bed. In other words, 24/7, you need to have these things. And then we'll see that the last three pieces of armor are to be taken up as the battle ensued, or as the battle ensues, being reactive. So the first three pieces of armor you have to have on right now. And then the last three is as you see things approaching, that's the time now, I got to grab this, and be reactive, if that makes sense. Paul had already taught us that, he had already taught us overall what these individual pieces of armor meant. In other words, as we go through the 6 pieces of armor, we'll be able to look back at Paul. Well, he already taught us this. He just didn't call it this piece of armor yet. So he's taught the Ephesians these things. He's saying, I've taught you these things. You understand these things. You're ready to go. And the Ephesians, like us, are sitting here deer in the headlights saying, so could we go over this again? And in the terms of warfare. Well, that's what he's doing for us here. So Paul had already taught us these things. But the first, and you'll see this, the first piece of armor is to be, as we see in verse 14, girded with the truth. Having girded your loins with truth. That means 24/7. Girded means everything tight and tucked. No loose spiritual ends. It means, and you military guys will understand this, the term being squared away. The other military term, which is a wonderful term, is not being a soup sandwich. A soup sandwich, you could do nothing with a soup sandwich. All it's going to do is just make a mess, and it's a disaster. The opposite of that is being squared away. Being girded means everything's tight and squared away, and in this case, no spiritual ends. We see this, the writer of Hebrews says this, Hebrews 12:1. Let us also aside every encumbrance and the sin which so easily entangles us, and let us run with the endurance of the race that is set before us. In other words, you got to tie up this stuff. You got to move this stuff out of the way. You got to tie your shoes. You got to be ready because you're going to fall flat on your face with issues in your life of sin or even encumbrances. They might not be sin, but they're things that are holding you back. Nothing hindering the fight and giving no advantage to the enemy. And even as the Israelites were getting ready for the first Passover, they were instructed to gird their loins and be ready. They needed to get out of there quickly. This means being prepared with the confidence to engage. Did I tie my shoe? Am I squared away? This is what needs to happen. Be girded with what? With truth. Be girded with truth. Now, there's two senses to the word truth. One is the truth, and the other one is truth, or being true. And so, the truth, which is the truth of God and everything else. I mean, there's only one truth, the truth. And then there's the other sense of the word, being true, or being true to the cause. And you've heard it in love songs, and a girl being true to her boyfriend, or these types of things. It means being faithful, dedicated, and committed, which in this case seems to be the sense of the word truth. And the reason why is it doesn't have what's called the definite article. It doesn't say in the truth, it says with truth. But we'll see that as we get along, that the truth is addressed in the other pieces of armor. But this one appears to be in the sense grammatically of being faithful, dedicated, and committed to the fight. And Paul had told them this in Ephesians 5:9, that those who walk in the light demonstrate this fruit of goodness, righteousness, and truth. Here we go. Trying to do what is pleasing to the Lord. That's the sense of being true to the Lord. I want to serve Him. I want to have the commitment and be dedicated and faithful in serving the Lord. So He had told us about that earlier. Like I said, the sense of the term the truth, we'll be talking about in the other pieces, but this sense of the truth then relates to the loyalty and commitment to the Lord. So that's what we see there. Therefore, when you are girded with the truth, you will be ready for battle, committed and loyal to Christ, with nothing holding you back, not giving any advantage to the enemy. That's girded with the truth. Then there's the breastplate of righteousness, verse 14. Also, having put on the breastplate of righteousness. Once again, this is a 24/7 thing. You need to have it on ahead of time. You have to have this before you even think about any battle. Even before you think that there isn't even such thing as a battle, you need to be squared away on this. Having put on the breastplate of righteousness. And this breastplate for the soldiers was made out of pieces of animal hooves, I should say, and antlers. Pieces cut and sewn on to be protecting the body, the upper body, or what we would call the torso. And so that's what the breastplate meant. And here we see the breastplate of righteousness, and this is not speaking of the righteousness that you already have in Christ being imputed on you, but instead it is the righteousness, your own personal righteousness in your sanctification process of how mature you are as a Christian and how sin-free you are. That's what this means here. And the reason we'll see this in the context, because Paul had already taught us about this in Ephesians 4:24, and put on the new self, which in the likeness of God has been created in righteousness and holiness of truth. In other words, you're going to have then the protection of maintaining a righteous life. You need the protection of maintaining a righteous life. Otherwise, you will have great vulnerability and an attack coming your way. If you're not walking as a Christian the way that you should, you're wide open for attack and vulnerability that can bring devastating pain to a Christian. Being disciplined. God allows those who claim to be Christians, yet living unrighteously, to suffer greatly from Satan. He allows it to happen. We see it in Matthew 18. If somebody doesn't want to, if a believer is not going to act like a believer, then they need to go out and get get messed with a little bit here. We see that 1 Corinthians 5:5 and 1 Timothy 1:20. So what this means is that if you are not living righteously, you're leaving yourself up open for all kinds of attacks. And with this, then, if we are walking this way, we are not protected by God. We're not protected by God then, unless we're living His way. And living unrighteously ensures vulnerability, and disaster awaits for those that don't want to walk with the Lord, and Satan will chew you up and spit you out. Living righteously ensures protection. So the breastplate of righteousness fends off Satan's accusations. In other words, Satan doesn't have any dirt on you. But as soon as you walk and say you're a Christian, and you walk around and you got a kink in your armor because you're not living righteously, you will get taken down. That's the first thing that Christians will see, that Satan will put the bug in their ear. Look at that, but he does this, and look at he does that, and he does this. And now you're completely taken out. And so you have to maintain your righteousness or you will get taken out, because his accusations will come. He's the accuser. The next piece here is the gospel of peace. Verse 15. Verse 15. Having shod your feet with the preparation of the gospel of peace. Once again, this is a proactive piece of armor. 24/7, you have to know that you have peace with God. And Paul had explained this. You got to know this. And he had explained it earlier in Ephesians 2:14-18, that through the gospel of Jesus Christ, we have peace with God and other warriors. He's on our side. We have peace with God. The gospel ensures that we're His children. And so we're ensured that we're His children. We have peace with Him, and we have peace with other believers, our other soldiers. Are we ready to go, guys? Are we ready to move ahead? Let's do this, because we're all under Christ, and we have insurance that we are with Him, and that we are together, and we are with each other. And that's the gospel of peace. We have then this divine confidence. Romans 8:31 tells us about this. If God is with us, who is against us? And it's us, because we're all in this together. We need this. So being grounded in the understanding of the gospel of peace means that you know God is on your side, therefore you will not slip or stumble to the point of being disastrous. You might mess up here and there, but you're going to be able to press on, and you're looking to each side of you, and the line is moving ahead, and you're at peace with your brothers and sisters, and you move ahead. Satan doesn't like that. Verse 16, now we have the shield of faith. In addition to all, taking up the shield of faith, with which you will be able to extinguish all the flaming arrows of evil. And taking up means doing so at the point of necessity. Taking up then means being, here we go, reactive to the circumstances at hand. In other words, you're going to have to respond to something. You're going to have to react to something at hand. You're going to have to not just be prepared with the first three, but you need to be ready to respond to something. You need to be ready. So this is reactive. And the shield of faith, back then the shield was protective. This particular shield is talked about. There's two different kind of shields that they use. One was a smaller personal shield, and the other one was a full shield, and that's what the Greek word here is for, representing a shield that's about 2.5 feet wide by 4.5 feet tall. And listen to this part. It could protect the individual soldier. It could protect other soldiers. And when it's linked together, it could protect the whole skirmish line. And it could be adapted to the threats from any direction or angle. It had a certain oil on it that could be, when a flaming arrow would come in and it would land in there, it would extinguish the flame, because the oil would put it out. And so with this true faith, then, because it's the armor, I'm sorry, the shield of faith. With this, true faith can protect against lies that come upon Christians. Paul had previously taught about this, the confidence that we have because of our faith. Ephesians 1:3, 2:8, 3:12, and 3:17, he has taught us that because of our faith, we can have the confidence, and so therefore we have the shield that we can deal with these things. The flaming arrows represent lies that tempt you to contemplate them. They come in and they tempt you to contemplate the lie, which then turns from a painful, yet not always deadly arrow into an overwhelming inferno of a satanic attack. Let me just explain that. Is that as an arrow comes in and it's on fire, you might say, ouch. And if you get rid of it quick enough, it's just ouch. But if you let that thing burn, it is going to turn into an inferno and devastate you and burn you up and then burn everybody else that's standing next to you. If lies are not extinguished, they lead to burning sinful desires, including fear and doubt. So when you let an arrow in and it starts burning and now you've let it in, it's more than just ouch. It's like, okay, so and you're contemplating this particular lie. Maybe there's some truth to it, or maybe this, or maybe that. Even fear and doubt that could come out of it. You're entertaining the lie that has been brought to you. And we know what happens there. We know what happens when you entertain a lie, and where it leads to sin. 1 John 5:4 tells us this: for whatever is born of God overcomes the world, and this is the victory that has overcome the world. Our faith is the victory that has overcome the world. This provides us from the protection of Satan, which is the tempter. That's what this shield of faith does. It can even help, listen to this part, it can even help other Christians when they are attacked. Your faith can help other Christians who are on fire. And I don't mean on fire like some people say. I'm talking about on fire, which leads to the lake of fire if it's not dealt with, if you're not saved. You can even help other Christians when they're attacked. And we can even stand firm, interlocked with our shields, or we can huddle around one who is wounded. As the church, with our shields, we have to use it for ourselves, but we can also use it for our brother or sister, and we can all huddle around and protect the church with our combined faith. We need every part of the body to have their shield up, and we can help each other, because the bottom line is someone's going to get taken out by something, and we need to gather around them. It's going to happen until we're glorified. So this is the shield of faith. Then we have the helmet of salvation, and take up the helmet of salvation. Verse 17. This protects your assurance of salvation. Now, this word isn't always the best word to be used, but for here it is. It's a feeling. Okay? Normally, we don't want anything to do with going by our feelings, but we don't want our feelings overriding us. And in this case, the helmet of salvation protects our assurance of salvation. In other words, we feel, understand, we don't get all emotional by our feelings. It actually protects our feelings with the assurance of salvation, so we don't go haywire. In other words, with this, you already have the security of salvation. That's a fact. But the feeling you might have as a Christian sometimes, like, I don't know. I don't know if I'm really saved or not. I did this, or I did that, or I did this. So the helmet of salvation gives you the assurance and reminds you of what you already know, that Paul has already taught us. Ephesians 1:3-5 and 2:8. He chose us before the foundation of the world, and he predestined us to adoption as sons through Jesus Christ to himself. So we have the security of salvation being sealed then by the Holy Spirit. Ephesians 1, John 6, John 10. We have all kinds of them if you need me to read them to you later. Paul reminds us of the truth of our battle in this situation here. 1 Corinthians 4:8 and 9. He reminds us that we are saved. And so it's going to be really ugly, but we are saved. Let's listen to this. This is a great passage. 1 Corinthians 4:8 and 9. We are afflicted in every way, but not crushed. Perplexed, but not despairing. Persecuted, but not forsaken. struck down, but not destroyed. This is the reminder of our salvation. Yes, it's going to hurt. And yes, you're going to go down temporarily, but you're not going to stay down. This is what this is. This is the helmet of salvation. It then protects Christians then against doubt and discouragement on the battlefield. You need to put that on. Or, hey, whenever something starts to feel a little bit, maybe I'm not really a Christian, maybe you need to put the helmet of salvation on. And the truth is, it's still a great wake-up call as you are being concerned about your salvation and looking around and saying, where did I put that helmet? Sometimes it's a wake-up call like, I don't have that helmet. I need that helmet. I thought I was saved my whole life and I got the wake-up call. I need to deal with this. This is the helmet of salvation. This means there might be a time when you thought you were saved and it turned out you weren't. And then when you become saved, I'm here to tell you, when you thought you were saved and you weren't, and then you finally get saved, you know you're saved.
Amen.
Amen. So the helmet of salvation then protects Christians against doubt and discouragement. The result of all this is being able to stand firm. I saw this in verses 11, 13, and 14. To stand firm against the schemes of the devil, to stand firm to resist to the evil day, every day, to stand firm to obey the command of God, because he's telling us, he's commanding us to stand firm. So now by putting on the armor of God, you're able to, and therefore you can meet that command. This means standing firm in the assigned post, wherever that is for the moment, because God might move you somewhere else, but standing firm at that post. The point here is not breaking rank because of fear or deceit. The point is if you're supposed to be standing here, you can't break rank because of your own sin, your own buying into a lie, or being scared or anything else. Paul says this in Philippians 1:27-28. This is a wonderful thing. Only conduct yourselves in a manner worthy of the gospel of Christ, so that whether I come and see you or remain absent, I will hear that you are standing firm in one spirit, with one mind, striving together for the faith of the gospel. Listen to this part. In no way alarmed by our opponents, which is a sign of destruction for them, but it's a sign of salvation for you, and that too is from God. See, the victory in standing firm is you can't hear me. I mean, you can't hurt me. That's the victory that we have, is that the enemy's looking at them like, you know, this guy's outnumbered, and he's still doing this, and something's up with this, and it's scary for people. And the bottom line is, we saw what Paul did, we saw what Jesus did, we saw all these things, and we saw that people are rattled by this. They speak with authority. Where's this coming from? And it's a sign to the enemies that you're going down, because it's obvious that you're backed by God if you're taking on these things. And here we see this is a great sign of this that that King David gives us in Psalm 23:5. David describes the victory in standing firm in this peace that surpasses all understanding. Listen to this. You guys have heard it a million times, but this is what he's saying to God. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You don't really think about that. It's towards the end of the psalm, but he's talking about what God does is he prepares a table for us in the presence of our enemies. Right in the middle, enemies are not in heaven. This is happening on earth when people look at you and go, well, the Lord's really blessing that guy. That has to be the Lord, because he's by himself, and David was outnumbered, and all these things happen, and we as Christians can acknowledge that the people are looking at us like, I don't know who's got his back, but he's got power, and that's where we get to show them. And not to walk around prideful about it, but to say, now, I want to tell you about this God. I want to tell you about this salvation. So we see there that this passage then shows us these two types of armor that's going to help us to stand firm. Girded with the loins of truth, which is being ready, committed, and loyal for battle. The breastplate of righteousness, which means being protected from Satan's accusations. The gospel of peace, which is having the confidence that God is on your side. The shield of faith is having the protection against Satan's lies. The helmet of salvation is the assurance of your salvation. The sword of the Spirit we will talk about next week. But what this is telling us is you need the full armor of God. Oh, I got 5 out of 6. No. You need the full armor of God, and it's only available through Christ. It says, therefore, take up the full armor of God so that you will be able to resist in the evil day. Now, let's talk about this for a minute. A little bit of sobriety here. King David was considered a man after God's own heart, and he was a great warrior. Okay? As a young man, he went up against the giant Goliath. Everybody in this room has heard this story. He refused the man-made armor of King Saul. He refused the man-made armor because he was confident in the armor of God. This is 1 Samuel 17:37. He was confident in God to deal with this, and he said, I can't even deal with this ridiculous stuff you're trying to make me wear. I haven't even tested it. It's just, all it is an encumbrance for me, a man-made armor. And he went out there with no armor, and he conquered Goliath. I'd like now, if you could turn to 2 Samuel 11, and just to open our eyes to these things. David was a man of God. David was a mighty warrior. And here we start out, 2 Samuel chapter 11, this story. Then it happened, in the spring, at the time when the kings go out to battle, that David sent Joab and his servants with him and all Israel, and they destroyed the sons of Ammon and besieged Rabbah. But David stayed at Jerusalem. Now when evening came, David rose from his bed and walked around on the roof of the king's house. And from the roof he saw a woman bathing. And the woman was very beautiful in appearance. So David sent and inquired about the woman. And one said, is this not Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam, the wife of Uriah the Hittite? David sent messengers and took her. And when she came to him, he lay with her. And when she had purified herself from her uncleanness, she returned to her house. The woman conceived, and she sent, and she told David and said, I am pregnant. What do we see here? David stayed home from the battlefield, yet the battlefield was in his own household, in his own life. He let his guard down in the comfort of his own home, and from his rooftop, the flaming arrow struck him. The battle was over there. He stayed home where it was all cushy. The battle wasn't here. The flaming arrow came in. When he first saw the beautiful woman, he should have recognized the potential battle and taken up his shield of faith. But he didn't. The flaming arrow pierced him. His passion began to burn as he sought her out. Even after being warned about her having a husband, the fire had already started. Even if he didn't see the battle himself, he was warned by someone else. Hey, she's married. Even if he didn't see it himself because he was so overwhelmed with the flame, he was even told this. The flaming arrow destroyed the household of Bathsheba and her husband, because her husband Uriah was murdered. Bathsheba didn't have her husband now. This flame destroyed their household. The flame of the arrow also engulfed David's own household, and this is what God said would happen, and this is what happened. 2 Samuel 12:10-11 says this. God is speaking through Nathan to David. Now therefore the sword shall never depart from your house. Thus says the Lord. Behold, I will raise up evil against you from your own household. David's baby son died. His other son raped his daughter. His other son killed that son. And that son was murdered as revenge for killing his brother. Take up the full armor of God. This is what happened to David, and this is when we don't take up the full armor of God. This is the sobering truth of why we need to not ever neglect any piece of the armor of God. Let's pray.